Hey guys, and welcome to another Star Wars Destiny video. Today we're going to be doing a quick little, talk about a deck and a debrief on a Store Championship win. Brian over here crushed it, so good job.
Yeah, I'm back in my store champ swing, I guess.
Yep. So a little bit of history. When I'm in playtesting mode, every once in a while I come up with like deck ideas. I just kind of like throw them around at people like, hey, you should try this. So I really like Executioner. I played him in like the Talzin Snoke Executioner deck, and Executioner's passive just feels so nuts, and especially when you like kill a character, roll him back out again, you have a Snoke focus already there, and you just get another two. It's just a free extra 2 damage. Um, in any case, all that led up to me being like, I want to run double executioner for fun, and one of the lists you can run is Aphra double executioner. So I just kind of threw together a list quickly, sent it to Elrathion, and he's like, okay, fine, whatever, I'll try it. And he started winning a lot with it. And then fast forward a little bit, Luke was playing it, I believe, against Andrew, and Brian stops by, sees it, decides to run the deck.
Yeah, I mean, Aphra was at Gen Con, which we
Mhm.
just came back from, and Aphra's one of those characters I've been waiting to be good, and it wasn't until 000 came out where I felt like she was even in consideration. And, I'd been playing Yoda Cassian, and that deck is really fun and really good. I will say being a two wide deck, I don't know, it's really kind of scary because you can lose a character pretty fast in this game right now. So if you lose like Cassian super early, the deck can kind of fold. So I was always looking for a deck that had a little more health to it, and a little more backup plan in case your main character dies. And having two executioners finish is actually like really strong.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like we found out that they want to go for the elite character that's Aphra, and then what happens is you deal this critical mass of indirect, and then all of a sudden your executioners get the kill, and when they reroll back in, all the other characters are at like 3 to 4 health left anyway, so it's like kill, kill, and the game's just over. It's like execution is the end of the game. Kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, my first game was against 5 battle droids at the store championship, and I think when I pulled out two executioners, he almost fainted. I mean, it wasn't even that easy of a game, but like John said, I got all of his characters to like 3 damage, and then once I did that next indirect wave, I rolled in a two on an executioner, and then it was all downhill from there. It was like I literally rolled in two executioner die, killed another droid, rolled in two executioners dies, killed another droid, and then he was left with like one droid left after that. So yeah, let's just say
it snowballs.
it went from he had a chance to he had no chance real quick.
Yeah, no kidding. So what about the rest of the event then?
Yeah, I mean, I played against a Plo Koon double Padawan, which I was actually kind of worried about. Indirect is really rough against Plo Koon because he can take a lot of damage, and he can put an ancient saber on him for free and heal two, and lightsaber pull, put it back on him, heal two for free. And I was really worried about that. Unfortunately, he did not draw ancient, and that was a huge plus for me. And so, I was doing a lot of indirect, and he put some other weapon on Plo Koon, so he couldn't just play a ancient for free anymore. So, I mean, I just out helped him basically. Like he killed Aphra, and then I was able to kill both his Padawans in one turn with the executioners, and then Plo Koon had like five indirect on him, and so it was pretty much a game over after that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the biggest cards I think that Aphra gained besides 000 is the climate disruption array.
Which kudos to Nick.
Yeah, that card is actually ridiculous. It's like planetary uprising, or yeah, from Spirit of Rebellion. It's like those times where you just like claim and deal two indirect. Well, this card is end of the turn, deal you three indirect with 000. Start of my turn, deal you three indirect for a 6 point like swing. Yeah. I had a lot of games where I was like, all right, you're at 3 left total health, claim. And they were like, oh, I guess I lose. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's even funny because if you're on your own battlefield, the Petronaki Arena, which most of you have probably forgotten about, what it does. Oh, I should probably click over here. Is it deals 1 indirect to yourself to deal 1 unblockable damage to a character, which is kind of nice. Especially when that's actually 2 damage.
Right.
Because you have the 000 down, and if you have Aphra, you're also drawing a card.
Sadly, I didn't play on my battlefield once. I was really surprised
Well, isn't
about
that kind of nice? That's like 2 shields all day.
It's kind of nice, but in certain matchups, like two wide matchups, I don't know. I feel like they never want to deal themselves damage, and you're always faster than them, so they just claim and do nothing a lot of times. And when you do claim, you can just do a quick claim, deal 2, and then start your turn, maybe kill them all. So.
Yeah, it's definitely. I know when I first threw together this list, I didn't put any vehicles in it, but the version that you ran had some vehicles. Luke, I think, originally started running those vehicles. But even with vehicles, it's still almost more tempting to run the Petronaki just because it's so asymmetrical, where it benefits you so much more than your opponent, especially into the mill matchup. They don't want to deal an indirect damage to themselves to deal unblockable to you.
Honestly, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to play this deck is I don't think it can lose to mill. I'd be hard pressed to see, especially 2 wide. There's no way they have enough health to survive long enough to do it.
I think the only way is if basically all your droids and your climate disruption arrays get milled.
Yeah, if you get some unlucky draws in your opening hand and then they mill your 000s or flames from the past 000s or something, like it's really hard. I think maybe if they run like 2-second chances
and part of the problem is too in that matchup is even if they get some good mills and they're playing it close, as soon as you get that first kill, everything snowballs with executioners, and all of a sudden they could be looking good. You get that kill, and then that kill becomes 2 kills, which becomes 3 kills very quickly.
Right.
Once again, climate disruption array is also nuts when your opponent's not doing it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just some things about the deck. Then, I mean, you go ahead and win the tournament. The deck, at least as Brian already said, is extremely good in the mill. I mean, similar to the, I think the Snoke Aphra battle droid. It kind of has that feeling where when you're dealing indirect to yourself, it doesn't matter anymore. So the planetary disruption just is a huge benefit. And here, the executioners are extremely good against mill. But in addition to that, it's also just almost like a free win into 2 wides because they have so low health, and then at the same time, it's like almost a free win into 3 wides because you get more executioner figures. I don't know what you guys have.
I don't know. I would say my only 2-wide matchup was actually my hardest matchup. It got me pretty close. Maybe it's just because it takes a little bit long. The 2 characters, they have higher health, and you're relying a bit on your executioners rolling in. So until you get that first kill, it's really tough. But when you do get that first kill, it's basically they either have to win with both characters or it's pretty much over. So if they have a good way to tank up,
basically, if you get that first kill and both your executioners are still alive, it's gonna be rough for them.
Yeah, I honestly think if you're running some sort of blue melee deck with Shotos, you can maybe kill both executioners before you lose a character. That'd be maybe probably one of the weakest points of the deck, is that it has no shield hate. But it has a ton of indirect.
It does have backup muscles, so
that does help.
It can help
and the battlefield is unblockable.
Yeah, the one funny
Relentless Pursuit is great.
Yeah, Relentless Pursuit. So we'll talk about a few specific cards here, but I did have a hilarious game in testing against Talzin Mando, where I drew no droids first hand, which always sucks.
Yeah.
But what I did draw is 2 backup muscles, and I put 6 damage on Talzin round 1, and then I could just basically, it's a free kill next round on Talzin because you have another 2 backup muscle procs. Killed Talzin, and it's just like,
how about
I don't need my droids.
My favorite hand was a BT1 and 2 backup muzzles and what's it? the crash landing or something. I had one opponent, he friends and low placed me, and then I did like the when the heals 2 and dangerous maneuver, and I drew into another removal card. And so he thought he was all good. I had no removal in my hand, and he rolls in and I play a removal card. And he like waited a second. He was like, "Wait, you didn't have any removal card?" And he was like, "Oh, you drew it." I had a lot of times where my opening hand I didn't have removal, and so I like was able to do climate disruption array, draw a card, and I was like, "Oh, there's my removal."
Yeah.
It's like it's really consistent.
The draw ability is really strong.
It's really underrated, I think.
Yeah.
Especially when you can draw often 2 or 3 times in a single turn.
Yeah, I pretty much averaged 1, but those turns where I can, early on, it's actually really strong turn 1, because turn 1 is like your setup, taking resources and playing cards. So being able to draw into like backup muscles or your 0 costs, so like Hunker Down. Hunker Down was nuts.
Yeah, I definitely, whenever I see those zeros in my opening hand, I'm like, I'll just keep this. Like, we're just gonna crash landing you. We'll dangerous maneuver because it's just gonna draw. And if you can get like the nuts is when you draw like 2 of those and a 000, and your first action is just play 000, and then you play 2 0-cost cards that manipulate damage, deal indirect to them, and draw cards. It's like, get wrecked. But in any case, let's talk about a few of the cards here that are kind of funny. So we got Emulate.
Emulate, you probably don't even know what that does.
That's definitely a card that I really... It's another reason I wanted to run 2 Executioners, is that I looked at this card at some point, like, I don't know, a month ago, and I was like, man, this is actually really good. It's 0 cost, die removal. Or die turning. Like, you're just like, oh, 2. Let's go.
There's that new Snoke card that calls 0. You take 1 and then turn a die for free. And, you look at that card and then you look at this card and you're like, wow, this is so much better.
And the sneaky thing is it's not a spot, so it can be the other your opponent's characters as well. So if they're playing an Executioner,
double Padawans, or you
can blank their dice if they're playing 2
Mandos. You can blank the Mando dice if you need to.
Yep. What's hilarious is I had one game playing against Andrew, who was also playing an Executioner deck, and he killed one of my Executioners, but I was still able to emulate because he had one. So it's kind of a flexible card, and like I said, even into those Aphra versus Aphra matchups, you can turn your Aphra dice with it too, which is nice. Get that 2 shield.
It's online for a really long time because people tend to go for Aphra.
And you have ways to spread out damage.
In my original version, I was running the Endless Ranks, which I know that you guys dropped it. I'm still on the edge about it. I kind of really like it into Mandos, but I think I just need to test more, to be honest. So yeah, Emulate is just so good.
We've seen how good die fixing cards have been.
Especially when you can just keep drawing cards, right?
0 for 1 die fixing is really strong.
When you're just like crash landing and then you draw an Emulate and you're like, let's go!
There's nothing better than that turn where you're about to get the kill and you draw 2 Emulates and you're like, all your Executioner roll-ins are going to be guaranteed 2s.
Oh, it's so good. So good. Let's go ahead and talk about Relentless Pursuit.
Relentless Pursuit. I don't know. That card killed so many characters out of nowhere. I killed a Padawan really sneakily with taking off some Plo Koon damage. And killed him. This is how I started the Battle Droid train, I remember now. I got a guy to 4 and then moved 2 over and then rolled out 2 dice. Killed another droid and killed another droid. This card just can, like, I don't know. People think they're so safe because you're all indirect.
Right.
And they're like, I'm going to just control his Executioner dice, and he's got no way to kill my characters. And then you're like, backup muscle. Then you're like, Relentless Pursuit. And then all of a sudden they're like, shit, how'd that happen?
So really, Relentless Pursuit and backup muscles are the cards that like help you get that first kill for the Executioners. And like Brian was saying, the Relentless Pursuit comes out of nowhere. Often your opponent is not expecting it, and it can be a complete blowout.
Right, and you can even just start around with it, and then it's like an action cheat where you basically activated your 2 non-unique characters all at once because both their dice are instantly rolled into your pool.
It gets around Force Illusion.
Yeah, that's
which is huge, and shields.
Yeah, shields can be rough. Force Illusion can be rough. But when you get a character down and they have like 4 health remaining, you you flame for Petronaki, deal an unblockable. Next turn, you're just like back a muscle, and then
Relentless Pursuit.
Relentless Pursuit. It's just like there have been many times where you go into the next round and you're like, if I draw my Relentless Pursuit, you lose because I just go back at muscle, Relentless Pursuit. That's 3 more damage onto your Talzin or whatever it may be, and I get 2 extra dice immediately, and good game.
Yep.
Yeah, especially when you're drawing cards for free, basically. The Relentless Pursuit at 0 cost is just another really good, cheap card to draw. I mean, yeah, there's not much else to say about it.
Let's see.
Bubble.
Bubble Shield
Yes.
is legit in this deck because there's finally enough indirects being dealt to yourself every turn with the addition of Climate Disruption Arrays that it's always a heal 3. No matter what.
Yep.
There was never a time where I didn't want that card, and that says a lot when I was playing against double Platoon Battle.
Yep.
Because I mean, you get a BT1 down there. You play a Crash Landing, or you activate. You could just BT1 Planetary Disruption. There's your 3 indirect.
I Crash Landing an ATST5 and soak 3 on the Bubble Shield.
Oh, it feels good.
It also helps you get off those Climate Disruption Arrays in the games that they're a little dicier.
Mm-hmm.
You can drop that down and then you can do it without worrying about the damage you're dealing to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just found there's a lot of indirect in the game right now, anyways.
Yeah.
Not that you really need to play against an indirect deck, but it's a good fallback plan to have like a little 3 health shield on you for you.
And kind of related to that is the good old Hunker Down, which I actually didn't have in my original list, but it's almost like another Bubble Shield type effect where you put it on a character they're not focusing, and when you're putting indirect out, you're just like, oh, I'll take it on the shield. I'll take it on the shield. It's a free health each round.
And it really isn't a melee dominated meta right now. So besides the Kylo decks.
Yeah, even Mandos, like they only have the one side, and that's really hard for them to push into, especially if you get an Aphra 2 shield side. You can really kind of protect that Hunker Down and make them kind of go after maybe even a different target that they weren't even going for. Maybe they're going for Aphra, and you put this on your Executioner, and they're like, well, shit, like I've got 4 damage on Aphra, but I got a Executioner building up shields with this indirect, so.
Yeah. It really is like a poor man's caution, especially in a meta without as much melee, because if you get it early, you're gonna get 3 shields out of it for free, and you don't have to remove a die for it. So
yeah, really and then there's those matchups where they just have 0 melee, and you get it turn 1, and it goes to round 4 or 5, and you're like, this thing was 0 for 5 heal. This is nuts.
It's also just, I mean, we've already kind of talked about this, but the shields in this deck aren't as vulnerable to shield removal because they go away so quick. I mean, you can do something like at the end of a turn, you're like drop the hunker down for a shield, play the it's a dangerous maneuver, deal 2 indirect to yourself, and you basically hit the shields with those. It doesn't leave yourself open to cards like Frighten, which are still kind of running around. Intimidates if you run into like a Kylo deck that still runs them. So the shields are almost always like instantly gone, which is I found to be pretty nice.
Yeah, I actually had a bit of a problem against a Snoke deck running Ewok Village. What I would end up doing is rolling out Aphra really early and getting the shields, and a lot of times he just claimed to get rid of them. And so I kind of had a free turn of no removal against me. Kind of gave up a die to make sure I didn't get any of my other dice controlled. Because he knew if he didn't claim, then he was getting I was getting a free 2 health from the Climate Disruption Ray. So it's definitely a lot easier to play around your opponent's shield removal than most cards.
I don't know that there's too much more to point out other than the deck has the option of running both Probe and Friends in Low Places if you want to. You can also run Interrogation Droids, which you may kind of laugh at, but when you consider you only have 2 droids that you can end up playing, if you add that in as your second and third, or your third and fourth droid you can play, playing a 1-cost droid that's going to look at your opponent's hand and potentially hit an event every round is actually really good, especially against some of the decks that are in the meta right now, like the mill deck that runs 18 events. It's just like activate them at the start, and you're like, oh, I'll take that hyperspace. Or, I mean, I guess against hyperspace jump decks, you tend to save the droid and wait until they're lower on their hand, activate it then. If they're holding onto the hyperspace, it can really save you. So there are lots of good event control options. You don't have to go that route because there's so much direct damage. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts.
What me and Brian ended up doing was put in the Hailfire droids instead. But if you're not going to run the Hailfire, it's kind of like, especially if you get it down early, a consistent probe every turn for one, which is pretty valuable. I think it's definitely a consideration.
I think probe is one of the best cards in the game right now. Every deck's running, I don't know, exception of some vehicle decks, every deck's running like 15 events, right. And just discarding 2 cards for free is really insane when a lot of the decks just kind of can roll in a ton of damage, re-roll, focus, and deal you 10. And if you don't have any removal, it's really nuts. Mm-hmm. And that's another reason why I like this deck, because like I said, I had somebody, friends in low places me, get rid of he doesn't like you. Friends in low places me, get rid of my other he doesn't like you. And then I played a card, drew a card, and got like crash landing. And like he was like, "Oh, you have no more removal," and then I like played crash landing. He's like, "Oh, wait, how'd you do that?" So
yeah,
like a lot of people are running these cards like close quarters. Having a climate or a BT out there where you can consistently draw an extra card a turn. Get to play around some of these cards really makes you a little flexible and I don't know, save against a lot of the decks in the meta.
Yeah, definitely. I know for me, it's the deck just feels so strong because I mean we already saw it in the Snoke Aphra Battle Droid, just how efficient Aphra is, where you have all these 0-cost cards that not only are they free, but you draw lots of extra cards so that you can, when you're drawing, they're more valuable because you can almost always play them. Cards like Hunker Down, the Dangerous Maneuver can always be played. You're looking at Relentless Pursuit you can just drop when you draw it.
It's easier to draw into cards like Tech Team as well early in the game to get the most value out of those.
And then some of these zeros combined with 000 begin to deal damage to themselves. So there's just so much efficiency there. But then what I think really rounds out this list that the Snoke Aphra list doesn't have is the game-ending potential of double executioners. It's just so nuts. Like if they go for Aphra first, then they're gonna kill Aphra at about the time that you get these kills with your executioners, and they're dealing with 2 to 4 extra dice in round 4 or round 3 or whatever, and it's just so powerful.
It helps fix what is otherwise a bad matchup for indirect decks like Aphra, which is the 3 wides. It helps make them a little better just because you're getting that extra value out of your dice once you start to get the kills.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between the Snoke Aphra and the Executioner Aphra is that the Snoke Aphra has a potentially way better start. You can get that resource start and start putting out a ton of dice onto the board. Whereas, this deck, I don't think I ever put out more than 2 in like the first turn, which is like rare. I usually just play 1 and maybe one cost removal or backup muscle. So, I mean, you have a lot less opening with the Executioner, but your closing is way better, in my opinion, and you're less susceptible to early control. I feel like the Snoke decks are really susceptible to early control on those key sides you want to Snoke, and then Snoke's just sitting there like, "Hey guys, I'm doing my thing. Look at me," and then you're like, yeah. So the early control against the Executioner is not really great. It's really the later in the game when you're really killing them with the Executioner that really shines. So I don't know. I kind of like the fact that I don't have to worry about like my opponent having like best defense and then wiping my whole early game plan or an entangle. All these cards are really popular right now. So I had some guy best defense me, and I was like, wow, this seems really good for me. I'm like, great, you got me.
Yeah, you really don't have any high value dice. The most is 2. They're all solid, but they're not like high value.
And you roll them out often 1 at a time, which If you're rolling well, especially means that the multiple dice removal is not that great. Like it's not that easy to easy pickings this deck.
Right.
So
You know what card also feels amazing is the He Doesn't Like You, which I know that everybody has been aware of. He Doesn't Like You for forever, but when you have, when you can almost play all of your cards, the ability to just like roll out the Executioner, be like, oh, I rolled a blank. He doesn't like you. Doesn't matter because I'm just gonna play all my cards, not having to reroll feels so nice. So He Doesn't Like You is a must. I didn't have that in my original list, especially when you're about to trigger them or when you trigger their passives and you roll out that blank and you're like, he doesn't like you, and then you activate him again, so you don't have to. Oh man, feels so good. I could run 4 of those in the deck. Probably would.
Right. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest weaknesses of the deck are a bit draw dependency. I think 000 is by far the biggest card in the deck. It turns on a lot of your cards to do an indirect damage, which really adds up. I think the next best card that you really need is Climate Disruption Ray. It's really the card that pushes those 3 wide matchups into kind of a closer, where every turn you're starting to deal 3, and they're starting to sweat, and then you get that first kill, and then it's all over from there.
Mm-hmm.
So the plus side is you're drawing extra cards. The downside is, there's going to be those games where you're going to not draw 000, and it's going to be a lot harder to win games without them. Mm-hmm. Not to say it's not doable, but I don't know. I wouldn't personally like to play that game.
Well, I mean, as I said, like, I've had games where, I didn't draw droids, but I drew 2 backup muscles round 1, and it was like, I beat Talzin Mando, which is what we found to be one of the hardest matchups for it. It's not, like, bad. It's just, like, 45-55 or something. And I missed my droids as, like, this sucks, but I drew 2 backup muscles, and, like, well, I guess I just killed Talzin instantly. Because you still have damage on your dice. You still have good cards in the deck. I just feel like the games where you do start out with 000s, the deck's just stupidly good.
Yeah, and the one thing about Destiny is that there's so few cards in your deck, and you draw so many cards that the odds of you not drawing one of 2 copies of a card is very low. Mm-hmm. And that's like one of the weirdest things about this game to me is that I'm used to 60 card decks, maybe 4 copies of each. It's pretty common to not see a card the whole game. Whereas Destiny, a lot of times you're almost drawing everything but 5 cards in your whole deck, like every game. Right. So
one of the things I like about the game too is you can build these decks around cards and pretty reliably draw them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I don't know that we'll talk too much more here. We're gonna have an article coming out soon about executioners and how they're being overlooked right now. They're so good.
Yep.
They're kind of in an awkward price point, which is kind of why they're being overlooked. The 8 costs is not ideal. You want the 7 or 6 cost non-uniques. They're so good. We'll also be posting the list in our Discord for you guys to view. And for you patrons seeing this, you'll get a sneak peek. So, yeah.
Yep.
It's definitely, I think, the biggest plus going for the deck right now is how good it is against Mill. And if you think that, like, if you're going to Nova and you're like, oh, I want to be able to beat Mill, then picking an Aphra deck, in my opinion, is great. And the biggest scare I think about the deck right now is you have to figure out how to beat Mandos, because the deck has 27 health, can spread it out, and can kill you really quickly. And sometimes the Executioner's passives aren't enough to bring you back on the rank. But I think that if you practice the matchup enough, you can get up to the point where you feel solid about it, and perhaps the surprise factor of the deck is enough to push it into your favor. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have any more thoughts.
It's really fun to play.
Yeah.
So even if you're not going to bring it to something like Nova, I'd recommend just building it and playing it.
It is fun.
It's just one of those decks that's really fun to play.
Reminds me a lot of Bala from set 1.
Mm-hmm.
Just rolling in all these dice over and over.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like a better Bala, because you don't have to get up weapons on them for it to be worth it, because he has 4 base sides.
They're also not the main target, which is such the Bala problem.
Right, because Aphra's just like over here like, shoot me, I have 2 dice and draw cards all the time, and the executioners are like, you killed Aphra, we sentence you to death. Ah! Well, thanks for watching, guys. See you soon.